Hi, this is Corey Johnston, and today's lesson is going to take place in the 16th chapter in the book of Luke. Like the 15th before, it is defined by parables. Parables are instructive illustrations that use narrative incidents, not implausible hypotheticals that use relatable events and experiences from everyday or commonly observed natural phenomenon to illustrate didactic truths. So there is a moral to the story. If no moral lesson is imparted in a parable, then it is not a parable. It is definitionally something else. And the three parables of which we read in the preceding chapter pertain to the joy of finding what has been lost, and we'll break them down in greater detail. The 16th, there is this is responsible stewardship, what we are to do with material resources, but other truths are completed. We read the doctrine of hell in the one we're not going to read today, the rich man and Lazarus. But in the one we're going to read today, this talks about emulating the worldly wisdom in pursuit of spiritual principles and resources and destinations. But the 15th pertain. Now, sometimes we don't know how much we appreciate something until we lose it, and then we find it again. So through the three parables, the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son, he expounds on this. If one sheep is lost, and the good shepherd leaves the 99 that are secure in the pen to find the one. This is doing what he is doing, coming to seek and save those who are lost, Luke 19:10. And when he finds the one and brings it back securely to the fold, that there is in heaven, so the chorus of the angels sing over the restoration of a lost sinner, much in the same way as does a woman who, having 10 silver coins and loses one, and sweeps the whole house, just gets under every nook and cranny, and then till she finally finds it. So too is the joy of the angels in heaven. And then the one we're going to break down in greater detail, the parable of the lost son, more famously known as the parable of the prodigal son. So there is a man with two sons, a younger and an elder. According to the law of Moses, the younger one would have been destined to inherit a third of the estate. The elder inherited 2/3. But this particularly prodigal son, he demands his inheritance while his father yet lives. So what he is saying is that you are dead to me. Give me what is mine. Now, when the father consents and he goes away to a distant country and there wasted his goods with loose living. So he was a selfish sinner. He spent it on prostitutes, the elder brother eventually says, and eventually he goes bankrupt, and a severe famine hits the land, and he is in want and he is in need. He is reduced to poverty, so much so that he is reduced to feeding the pigs. This would have been a disgrace of all disgraces for Jewish people. These were the filthiest animals. And so he is in Gentile territory. He got away from the farm. He went to the world, as the Jews would have called it, the Gentile world. And look where he winds up now. And he's noticing with envy how much better the pigs eat. And so he says this in verse 17. But having come to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to spare, and I am perishing with hunger? He finally came to himself. This is what it took. It took pain and learning from his own error. The road to excess does lead to the palace of wisdom in some cases, William Blake. So he had come to himself. He was instilled in repentance. He knew that he envied not only the pigs, but even more so the servants in his father's employ. And he knows that there is more abundant food there than the pigs who are eating and living better than he is. Having risen, I shall go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against the heavens and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. He doesn't get to the final request. He just and when he finally runs into his father, the father runs out to meet him, and he doesn't let him get so far as to offer to reduce himself to a servant in his household. He accepts him and embraces him as a son without even hesitating or thinking twice. But he is contrite. He does confess. He is remorseful. He is regretful, and he is repentant. So his spirit is commendable, even if the thing which necessitated the very spirit of repentance is anything but. So the father ran. He saws him. He's first off, he's looking for him, and so too is our heavenly Father looking for the restoration of the lost and wayward sheep in heaven. And he embraces us, and it would have been considered undignified for an elderly Jewish male to run out, to reduce themselves to the embarrassment of running out. But this father observes no restraint or abandon in embracing his son, who proceeds to get him as far as I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father will have nothing of that. He will hear no such thing. And he commands his servants to bring out the best robe and a ring. So this son, who had done nothing to deserve it, is suddenly the beneficiary of grace. And so too are sinners who were dead in sin and lost in dead in sin and trespasses when we receive the light of heaven. And he also says this in verse 23, and bring the fatted calf here and slaughter it, and let us eat and rejoice, because this son of mine was dead and is alive again, and he was lost and found. And they began to be rejoiced. As far as the father was concerned, this son of his might have been dead, but he was spiritually dead. But he's talking about the newfound life, the new lease of life. He's returned. He wandered away. We are all children of heaven who wander away in our mortal journey, and we eventually find our way home. So there is rejoicing in the angels, but one person there is not happy, and that is the elder brother. Remember him. This is the younger brother. The elder brother had remained faithful. The elder brother had remained obedient, and the older brother is, in this illustration, the Pharisees and the scribes, who are the target, the grumblers of verse 2, who are protesting that he receives sinners and eats with them. And he is showing that even the sinners, even the prodigals, even the prostitutes, even the publicans are making more of the heaven, the kingdom of heaven that is in their midst. So he has it all wrong. He protests. He's so angry that he won't join them. He will not rejoice in the restoration of his younger brother, whom he envies, because he tells his father flat out, I have been, see, these many years I have been serving you, and I have never transgressed a command of yours. But to me, you have never given a young goat, and I could rejoice with my friends. But when this son of yours comes, who has devoured your livelihood with whores, you slaughtered the fattened calf for him. This son of yours, he did not meet him as an equal or as a brother. He was talking to his father, of his brother to his father, who he calls this son of yours, not this brother of mine, but this son of yours comes, and look what he did with what you gave him. He squandered your inheritance on foolish, sinful living, on prostitutes, and you reward him for his infidelity when I have been meticulously plodding to the farm duties. The younger brother had no aptitude for the disciplined wholesomeness of farm life, so he got away to the city. This Pharisee was in the fold of Abraham, theoretically, yet he was lost because he was guilty of the sin of self-righteousness. I have never transgressed a command of yours. By the sheer length of his time being there, he would have certainly broken one, but that's what self-righteousness does to people. It makes them think that they are immune from sin or its consequences. Then he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all I have is yours. And we had to rejoice and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive, and is lost and is found. What's interesting here is not so much the lost and the found. That makes sense. That is literally true. He was lost. He was wayward. He went his own way, did his own thing, and then he eventually returned home. He had the crystallized conclusion that life really wasn't so bad compared to what he had been reduced to. So, of course, the father is going, but what's also interesting is he considered him dead and alive. Now, he may have not known if he was dead or alive, so the mystery is dispelled by his presence, his being there, which convinces him infallibly that his son is in fact alive, and that warms his heart. So of course he has to rejoice and be glad with the servants, because this is the restoration of a lost sinner to the heavenly homeland by the metaphorical meaning of the parable. 16th chapter, first verse, but before we get into the lesson itself, we just want to say that there is, we may have mentioned this earlier, but there is a dialogue in between. So once more the target, which indicates once more the target of his parable was the Pharisees who were present, and he was condemning them and rebuking them with these parables, as he was in the 15th. And he also said to his disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a manager when he was accused to him of wasting his possessions. So even though he is talking to his disciples, there are Pharisees who are grumbling around them. They're sneering, they're grumbling in the second verse of the 15th chapter. They're sneering in the 14th of the 16th. So they were present, but he is addressing face to face his disciples. They are lurking in the corner, trying to get him, trying to trap him into some doubtful utterance of reproach, according to which they could indict and condemn him as a violator or offender of their own or Roman law. But more to the point of the parable itself, we established the audience. Now we want to dissect and analyze the contents themselves. Rich men would have had stewards or managers to manage their estates and their vast sums of money. And this particular manager was an unfaithful one. He was treating. He did not have the mindset of the steward. He had the mindship of a son. Just much like the prodigal, he thought he could do with his fathers what he had not done. So he violated the law. The boundaries of the master steward relationship. He treated as what was his owner's, as was what was his. So he was wasting his possessions, and he pigged out. He did not observe moderation or restraint in doing this. So eventually, it does not escape the notice of the rich man, whom his livelihood is dependent on. He finds out, and he fires him in the next verse. So having called him and he said to him, "What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, for you are no longer able to be manager." Word has reached his ear. He pigged out. He could have gotten away with it if he wasn't so greedy, but he was sloppy and just extreme and excessive in he did not observe the principles of moderation or restraint in chiseling his master. He was unfaithful with what belonged to him. He was not an owner. He was a trustee and a manager and a steward. And so his employer asked to give an account of your management, settle all your debts because you are out of here. I am moving on to someone else. You lost the right, you lost the privilege, you lost the responsibility because of your irresponsible dereliction of duty. You are no longer able to be manager, and this is his manager because as soon as the unfaithful steward hears those words, he starts calculating, I cannot do hard labor, I am too proud to beg, so he makes himself a manager of another employer by chiseling his employer, and this ties into the no man shall serve two masters, at which the parable concludes. And the manager said within himself, "What shall I do? For my master is taking the managership away from me, and I am unable to dig. I am ashamed to beg." So this is what he's thinking. He's saying it within himself. He's not saying it out loud. As soon as he hears the master say this verbally out loud, these are his internal musings, internal dwellings. And he wants to know what his options are because he had a good thing, but he threw it all away with his greed and his selfishness. And so he wants to know what his career options are. And, he knows that he loses his means of livelihood at present, and he doesn't have any plan B. So what he does is he hatches a plan B, because he knows he's not cut out for physical manual labor. That's what digging would have done. That would have been menial task, lower socioeconomic echelons. And of course, he was too proud to beg, so that was not a feasible career option. So the only thing he knows how to do was to perpetuate his stewardship through dishonest means, through another host. So he's a parasite moving on to the next host. "I know what I shall do, that when I am removed from the managership, that they might receive me into their houses, that they are the master's debtors," the people who owed him money and things. So we witness his maneuvering here. So they might receive me into their houses. So he's kicked out of one house, but before he goes, he has to settle his accounts and get all his debts. So the conspiracy that he hatches and implements is based on selling his master short, demanding less of them that was owned in order to procure their loyalty by saying, "Hey, he got me this great deal. He chiseled his own master for my sake. I'm the beneficiary of it. I'm going to trust him." But that would be like going with a girlfriend who had cheated on her boyfriend with you. That's not someone you can trust in such a situation. But in any case, they are impressed, as is the man's former master himself, as he acknowledges in the 8th verse. And calling every one of his master's debtors to him, he said to the first, "How much do you owe my master?" And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said to him, "Take your account and sit down quickly and write 50. This would have been equivalent to some 800 gallons of oil. So oil would have been the item of value that is leveraged as debt. And this would have taken some 450 olive trees to amass that sum of oil. But he's saying, write 50. He's giving him half off, and so he's collecting his debt, he's settling his debt, and he's depriving his master of what he had given him. But he is hopefully advertising himself to a new master, because he is on his way out of the door of the other, and he wants to place them his master's debtor in his debt in order to procure employment and move on to the next sucker. Then to another he said, "And how much do you owe?" And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, "Take your account and write 80." So this would have been about 100 acres of farmland would have been necessary to extract that amount of measures, also known alternately bushels. So there are as many bushels as there are wheat. So this is a bushel is more than a mere thing of wheat. It is a vast sum, but he's taking him, is not quite as a discount that is disadvantageous for his master. It's some 80%, because 80 of 100 is 80%, and in the prior one, 50 of 100 is 50%. But both sums of money provide us with the statistically efficient indicator. And the master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly, because the sons of this age are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. Sons of this age alternately translates as the son of the world. The children of the world are wiser in the ways of the world than are the children of light. But so in order to overcome the world, which is one of our spiritual enemies, we have to be at least as wise as the world. And this is not to suggest that we are wise in the ways of the world, the cutthroat, ruthless tactics, but we have to be wiser in the ways that are wiser than the ways of the world in order to overcome the world. The master he does not spare anyone's feeling. He tells us flat out that we are not as shrewd. So there is much to admire in the ingenuity of this dishonest rascal that are worthy to be emulated by the saints, both in material resources, using them to spread to others, and also spiritual resources. We have to be similarly cutthroat and ruthless in pursuit of our salvation. We have to, not chisel people out so in the ways of the world, or, certainly we do not advance in spiritual treasures and wealth and riches by cheating other people, but we have to be similarly minded. The shrewdness, the prudence, the tact, the strategic planning, we have to be like-minded, similarly minded, and we must do it at least as well as they do to get ahead in the world in order to get into heaven. And would I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous wealth, that when you fail, they shall receive you into everlasting dwellings. This is a form of a question, so without the question mark, which I may not have, my monotone may have resurfaced there, but this is a question, so this is not read as an endorsement of Jesus endorsing the practice of dishonest chiseling and screwing your friends over and just betraying your masters who your loyalty should lie to, but he's saying use them as an example, be similarly cutthroat and ruthless, not literally cutthroat, because the physical world, the material world, the parallel is not identical in the spiritual world, but be prudent, sober, diligent, and strategic, as are these people. And we are investing treasures in heaven when we share our bounty of unrighteous wealth. And make friends for yourself. We are not to be so aloof from the world as to not deign to dine with the sinners in the world, as did Jesus, and he sanctified even the parties with his presence. He who is trustworthy in what is least is trustworthy also in much, and he who is unrighteous in what is least is also unrighteous also in much. This reminds us of the parable of the unfaithful steward, the king who goes away on a distant land to claim his throne. This would have been recognized as one of the Herods by the original audience. But when he comes back, there's this unfaithful servant who he had given 1 coin to, and he buried it in the in the field. But the servant that he had given 5 coins to, he returned 10 to him, and the servant that he had given 10 coins to, he returned 20-fold to him. So he was right to not trust the unworthy and unfaithful one with 1, because look what he did with it. No dividends, no gain came from it. So we have to be trusted. We cannot, you do not get to be president without, well, actually, Donald Trump is the exception to this rule, and I think much of his exceptionalism lays in the fact that he has not been corrupted through the political process. But as a general principle, you would not trust a pope, if you were a Catholic, to be pope without having first served as a bishop or even before that, just a pastor of a local congregation. We have to advance ourselves up by proving ourselves in lesser matters in order to be trusted, tried, and true. We have to be tried and true in order to be trusted. So we have to prove ourselves in the lesser spheres, lesser jurisdictions of responsibility in order to be permitted access to the greater ones. And it is much the same thing with revelation. We have to obey an obedient response, and a responsible revelation demands a response. So if you are stuck in an inertia where God's just not talking to you or telling you things, that is because you are not obeying. So we have to obey what is the little commandments, not treat trivially, not excuse them, not say, oh, it's just a white lie. We have to treat it seriously and have the right mentality. If therefore you have been trustworthy in the unrighteous wealth, not been trustworthy in the unrighteous wealth, who shall entrust you to the true? He's talking about two different things here, material resources and truth, which is a spiritual resource. So if he is not saying that we are bad people if we, cannot balance a budget or anything like that. But he's unrighteous wealth. This is alternately translated as mammon. So mammon is the Aramaic term for the pursuit or ethos of the ethos of the pursuit of material gain. So you cannot be trusted with money. You cannot be trusted with heaven if you do not manage. So submission to his sovereignty entails every aspect of our lives, both financial. We have to put our pocketbooks in God's service, the same as our bodies, the same as our everything else. And if you have not been trustworthy in what is another man's, who shall give you what is your own? Everything that we have and can own and experience on this earth is a gift from God. It belongs to him. We are mere stewards. In our report card, we are not measuring up well to our ability to steward the resources that he has provided, both material and spiritually. So we can, if we do not make the most of the gifts and the opportunities that God provides for us, the wealth that he showers on us, then we cannot own our own lives. We cannot be trusted with salvation in his presence forever. So this earth, it's a lesser tier of exaltation, but in order to reach the highest tier, heaven, we have to be tried, tested, and proved true, and emerge approved. So the word approved, we cannot be approved unless we prove ourselves worthy of being approved and accepted in heaven. We have to go through the mundane, the unexalted, just the humble and obscure in order to reach the grandiose. No servant is able to serve two masters, for either he shall hate the one and cling to the other and despise the other. You are not able to serve God in wealth or mammon. We witness the truth of this principle in the unrighteous, the unfaithful steward. His loyalty was not to his master when he was chiseling his out. His loyalty was to his potential, his would-be master. He was switching sides, switching allegiance, because he had been less than loyal to him. So such a man will have such duplicity, and a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. We disciples are to have integrity. We are to have uncompromised love, loyalty, adoration, and affection to one master, the heavenly master. And if we divide any of those commodities, our love, loyalty, adoration, or affection, to any lesser thing, then we are unfaithful servants. And it is an impossible balancing act to maintain indefinitely this divided loyalty. Either we are for him or we are against him. And it is just not possible to serve God and money. Money is a lot of people's gods. They think on it constantly. They look to it as the end-all, be-all, the panacea to all that plagues them, all their problems, the cure to everything that bores them and ails them, and it is their ultimate source of satisfaction and security. And they think on it constantly. It is their preeminent pursuit, their main concern. They pray for more of it, but money is a cruel master and a deceptive one. So God can liberate us from the enslaving potential and power of money. That's all the time we have for today. We just wanted to read the thing that comes in, that is underlined in red. Thank you so much for being here. Stay tuned until next time. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.